There's a leaf in your driveway right now that, leaf for leaf, contains more omega-3 than salmon. It's small, succulent, often pushed flat by foot traffic, with paddle-shaped leaves, red stems that glisten when you break one, and tiny yellow flowers tucked low to the ground. Name it, Purslane, botanical name, Portulaca oleracea. That unassuming green is not just a weed to be mowed over. Across millennia and continents, it fed people, offered medicine, and, by modern analysis, offers a concentrated dose of plant omega-3 that most of our cultivated salads lack. This plant has a story that runs deep. Archaeologists have pulled purslane seeds from pottery and midden deposits thousands of years old, showing it was a deliberate part of diets in the Mediterranean and beyond. Romans listed it among garden herbs. Medieval cookbooks included it in stews. Native American agricultural systems in what's now the eastern United States incorporated it alongside other cultivated plants. People tended it, saved its seed, and carried it with them across landscapes. It was a familiar, dependable food, often overlooked today only because it thrives in places modern landscaping does not tolerate. So how did a ground-hugging green become a nutrition headline? The key is its fat profile. Most leafy greens are low in fat. Purslane is an exception because it accumulates alpha-linolenic acid, ALA, the plant form of omega-3. A 1992 analysis by Dr. Artemis Simopoulos reported purslane values in the range of roughly 300 to 400 milligras of ALA per 100 gram of fresh leaves, several times higher than common salad greens like spinach and lettuce. That's the headliner behind the bold claim, leaf for leaf, purslane can outpack many vegetable leaves for omega-3 content. Let's be clear about terms. ALA is an essential omega-3 fatty acid found in plants. EPA and DHA are longer-chain omega-3s typically abundant in fish and marine oils. They appear in different chemical forms and have different roles in the body. Humans can convert ALA into EPA and, to a lesser extent, DHA, but conversion is limited. In other words, ALA-rich plants like purslane can raise your plant-based omega-3 intake, but they are not an exact one-to-one replacement for marine EPA, DHA without context. Conversion rates vary by person and diet. Some lab analyses report trace amounts of EPA in purslane itself, an unusual finding for a land plant, reported in analyses following Simopoulos' work. Those are noteworthy but small. The broader point is purslane's unusually high ALA content among leafy greens. There's also an epidemiological thread worth noting. Mid-20th century studies, most famously Ansel Keys' 7-country study, documented striking differences in cardiovascular mortality across diets. Researchers observed some Mediterranean populations, especially on Crete, who ate diets relatively high in fat yet experienced lower rates of heart disease than expected. These observations don't produce simple cause and effect answers, but they opened a search for dietary factors that might help explain the pattern. Local fats, plant foods, whole food traditions, and food availability. In landscapes where purslane was seasonal and common, it plausibly contributed to dietary omega-3 availability. That doesn't mean purslane alone prevented illness, but it does remind us that traditional diets often included wild or semi-cultivated plants that modern nutrition surveys may overlook. If the nutritional profile brings interest, the plant's physiology brings amazement. In 2022, a research team at Yale published a paper describing something rare. Purslane appeared to operate two kinds of photosynthetic metabolism within the same cells, C4 during the day and CAM-style water-saving activity at night. To unpack that in one image, imagine a car capable of running both on gasoline for speed and on electricity for efficiency when the road conditions demand it. In plant terms, C4 photosynthesis is a pathway many fast-growing crops use to fix carbon efficiently under high light and temperature. CAM, crassulacean acid metabolism, is a water-saving strategy where the plant fixes carbon at night to reduce water loss during hot, dry days. For a single land plant to show both modes inside the same cells is unexpected and explains why Purslane combines rapid growth with extreme drought and salt tolerance. Scientists framed that finding as something bordering on what they called a biological impossibility, meaning it challenged established assumptions. This was the team's phrasing to emphasize novelty, not a claim that all plant physiology must be rewritten overnight. That dual metabolism has practical implications. Reports indicate Purslane can complete its life cycle on a fraction of the water required by many staple crops. Some studies suggest it survives with roughly 1/5 the water requirement of maize under comparable conditions, making it an appealing candidate in dry or saline soils where other greens fail. Clinically verified numbers and exact percentages depend on local conditions and experimental setup, so such metrics should be read as reported results rather than universal rules. Still, the plant's natural knack for thriving in tough spots is why agronomists and foragers alike prize it. It produces huge quantities of seed, spreads by stem fragments, and often remains viable in the soil seed bank for decades. Studies report seed production on the order of hundreds of thousands per plant in optimal conditions and seed viability measured in years to decades under lab conditions. Those traits make Purslane both resilient and, in managed landscapes, a persistent weed. And that persistence sits uneasily with modern agricultural and landscaping systems. Purslane's resilience makes it hard to control through standard mechanical or chemical means. It can regrow from fragments and produce seed prolifically. Because it cannot be easily patented or commodified in the way hybrid or proprietary crops can, much of modern infrastructure treats it as an invader to be controlled. The global herbicide market, which includes products used to control broadleaf weeds, has economic incentives to target species that interfere with monoculture cropping and tidy lawns. Companies such as Bayer, Syngenta, and Corteva are among the major players in that market, stating their presence is not an accusation but a fact about who supplies the chemicals used in modern weed control. The result is a cultural pattern. We sanitize yards of so-called weeds, remove the wild foods that once fed households, and favor a narrow set of cultivated crops that fit industrial systems. That economic reality helps explain why a nutrient-dense plant with millennia of use can simultaneously be abundant and invisible in our diets. But abundance is opportunity. If you want to reclaim Purslane as part of what you eat, start with identification. True Purslane, Portulaca oleracea, has paddle-shaped, smooth, succulent leaves arranged alternately on reddish, smooth, prostrate stems that often radiate out in a mat. The stems feel juicy and break with a translucent, moist snap. Flowers are small and yellow, opening in full sun. Seeds are tiny, black, and produced in capsules that dry and split when ripe. It grows low to the ground, not upright like many garden plants. A quick check. Red stem, succulent leaf, tiny yellow flower, and a habit of sprawling are good indicators. Be cautious. Similar plants exist. If you're ever unsure, consult a local foraging guide or local extension service. Harvesting is simple and forgiving. Young leaves and tender tips, typically in the first 4 to 6 weeks of growth, offer the best texture and flavor. A lemony, slightly salty, succulent crunch that brightens salads. You can use it raw like arugula for a peppery bite, sauté it like spinach for a silky side, toss it into soups and stews at the end of cooking to retain texture, or blend small amounts into smoothies to boost plant omega-3. It also pickles surprisingly well and can be added to omelets and savory pancakes. If you plan to harvest from public green spaces or private lawns, respect property and legal boundaries, do not harvest from treated or sprayed areas, and avoid places with possible contamination like roadsides or industrial runoff. Washing thoroughly removes dust and garden debris. If you're interested in saving seed, wait until the seed capsules turn brown and papery, then collect into a paper bag and let them dry. Separating seeds from chaff is easy by rubbing the dried capsules between your fingers over a sieve or sheet. Store seeds in a cool, dry, dark place in airtight containers. Reports indicate Purslane seeds can retain viability for many years under proper storage. Some experiments report longevity measured in decades, making them a long-term resource for home gardeners and seed-sharing networks. For propagation, stem cuttings root readily. A short fragment placed on soil will form roots in days under moist conditions, another reason it spreads so effectively. Culinary safety notes are important. Avoid harvesting from lawns treated with herbicides, insecticides, or from areas that might be contaminated by pet waste or pollutants. Foragers should learn the look-alike species in their region. When in doubt, show a specimen to an expert or use reputable local resources. Purslane has a tangy, lemony flavor with a mucilaginous texture when cooked, similar to okra's silkiness, so some recipes pair it with acidic ingredients like lemon or vinegar to balance mouthfeel. Beyond a single leaf on your plate, Purslane opens conversations about food sovereignty. In a world facing more frequent droughts, soil salinization, and disrupted supply chains, plants that thrive on little water and poor soils deserve attention. Purslane's mix of nutrition and resilience makes it a candidate for more sustainable backyard gardens, urban agriculture, and community seed projects. Integrating wild or semi-wild crops into diets doesn't require abandoning existing food systems. It's about diversifying and strengthening what we already have, so households can be less vulnerable to shortages and price shocks. Skepticism about industry incentives is healthy, but so is caution. It's true that plants like Purslane don't fit neatly into the industrial patent model and therefore receive less investment for breeding or commercialization. The economic structures around agriculture favor patented seeds, fertilizers, and crop protection systems. That dynamic shapes what we grow, what we promote as marketable, and what remains in the margins. Presenting these facts is not the same as alleging a hidden conspiracy. It's an observation about how markets and incentives can shape diets and landscapes over time. Back to the science for a moment. Beyond ALA, Purslane brings other notable nutrients. Studies and nutrient analyses report elevated levels of vitamin E, an antioxidant, beta-carotene, a vitamin A precursor, minerals like potassium, magnesium, and calcium, as well as compounds like glutathione and melatonin that have antioxidant properties. These co-nutrients matter because foods are complex packages. A plant's benefit isn't a single molecule, but the sum of its chemistry and how it fits into an overall diet. How might you try Purslane this week? Find one plant in your neighborhood. Again, avoid treated areas. Pick a handful of young leaves and stems, rinse gently and toss with olive oil, lemon, and a pinch of salt for a raw salad, simple and immediate. Or saute it briefly with garlic and finish with lemon for a warm side. If you have picky eaters, try mixing small amounts into a familiar dish to let the flavor blend in. If you like preserving, pickle a jar with vinegar, sugar, and spices. The acidity tames the mucilage and highlights the tangy notes. There are practical community steps too. Share seeds with neighbors, swap recipes at a local community garden, and encourage municipal green space managers to consider tolerance zones where wild edibles can coexist with formal plantings. Small behavioral changes, stop automatically reaching for the weed whacker, taste something you've previously pulled up, add up. In a broader sense, recognizing the value of plants like Purslane rewires how we think about the resources at our feet. So what does this mean for the title claim? Leaf for leaf. In terms of ALA content per fresh weight, purslane can indeed register higher amounts than many common salad greens and, in reported analyses, compares favorably to other plant sources. That's not to say it replaces all marine oils or that it is a miracle cure. But it is a nutrition powerhouse in its own right. A plant humans cultivated and ate for thousands of years, one that packs plant omega-3, antioxidants and minerals into a small, resilient package. Add to that a physiology that allows it to withstand drought and salinity in ways our major crops do not, and you have a picture of a humble species with outsized potential. If this has sparked curiosity, here's a simple challenge. This week, find a purslane plant. Harvest a small amount from a safe, untreated spot. Try it raw in a salad or briefly sautéed and tell us about it in the comments. What did it taste like and how did you use it? If you want more digging, look up Dr. Artemis Simopoulos's analysis on purslane nutrition. Read about Ansel Keys' 7 countries study for the historical context, and check the 2022 Yale paper in Science Advances about dual photosynthetic modes for the biological novelty. If you value rediscovering resilient foods and practical knowledge, subscribe to this channel. There's more on wild edibles, climate-adaptive crops, and simple recipes coming. There's a leaf in your driveway, on your sidewalk, or in the edge of your garden that most people walk past every day without noticing. Try it once. Eat something that's been feeding people for thousands of years, and in doing so, claim a small piece of food sovereignty for yourself and your community. If purslane is growing where you live, don't spray it. Eat it, save its seed, and share that seed with someone else. You might be surprised how a tiny red-stemmed plant can change the way you think about food.